Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I am Gabriel, and I am here to talk about the Stark color scheme. And I just want to kind of specify what colors I use when I'm painting the Stark characters, the Stark units, that sort of thing, just to give you a general idea of what kind of colors you might look for if you want to replicate something similar to what I'm doing. Um, I have to preface this though. I really don't like collecting huge amounts of paints. I really don't like um, really worrying about what specific exact paint you're using. Yes, the color won't be the same. It's not going to be ultramarine blue made by Games Workshop. But if it's, very close, if it gives that same color, then what's the big difference? If you really want it to be the proper paint color because it's like a historical thing, you want to really get that accurate color scheme, then I totally understand. But I just wanted to kind of preface it with that before we actually get into what colors I use. And also, just another quick thing is um, you don't have to use the same brands I do. If you find that you really love something, then just find the colors that work well for you, for what you want to achieve with that brand. If you really like Citadel paints, if you really like Vallejo, if you really like P3, then just go that way. But I would really recommend before you just buy, 50 paints to um, find just a few paints in a few different colors and then check the consistencies because metallics in one paint might not be as good as the metallics in another. The reds might not turn out as well. The yellows might not turn out as well. So you just have to keep in mind what the people in the community are saying and what you like when you test it. But I found my favorites. You can find your own. Anyway, let's head into it. Enough time wasted. So here we have the Sworn Sword Captain, which I believe is the alternate sculpt. It might just be something else, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So you can see these are the typical star colors, and this is what I've nailed down with the experience of painting several units of Starks. So starting off with the kind of stark pale color is we have Rakarth Flesh from Citadel, and we have Wolf Gray from Army Painter. So I don't have a specific ratio for you to work with, but the gist of it is to create that nice kind of pale bluish color. The thing is, you can kind of search for yourself, but I kind of wanted a cooler color because that kind of would suggest that colder climate without having to actually put a bunch of snow on the base or that sort of thing. And so what you can do as well is just search online and find what specific paint color matches with with whatever kind of stark color you're looking for. If you want it more bluish, if you want it a little bit warmer. And basically what I'm doing is Rathkarth Flesh is a very pale flesh color, and I'm just using the Wolf Gray to introduce kind of a slightly desaturated blue to the color to get that balance of paleness and coolness without having a really vibrant kind of shocking tone. That's not really the scheme. And then I just use a straight wolf gray for the stark wolves that are on their shields, their banners, wherever you see that sort of thing. I just use this color, and I think it works really well. And you could also just use like a tone like Rakarth's Flesh by itself if you want to do that Stark Cape just more in a slightly warmer tone. But just keep that in mind that color temperature can make a significant difference when it comes to the painting of the model. Now, bye-bye. The next biggest thing is their metal. So I just use P3's straight pig iron. I find Leadbelcher from Citadel is pretty similar, but I think it's like a little slightly darker. They all have slightly darker tints, but this is essentially just kind of like a slightly darker tone than you would find on like very polished metal. So I think this works really great for kind of the rank and file, the rougher and tougher stark aesthetic that we have with these units. And of course, I just use dark tone. You can really just use any black wash for that. And then if you want to uh, kind of change the tint a little bit, it's okay to mix in a little bit of black or white if you want slightly brighter or slightly darker armor. But just keep in mind that the more non-metallic pigment you put into this, the it, it the less metallic it will be. So if you still want that shiny effect, right? You can see here very plainly. You're not going to get it as much as if you reduce what's coming out of here. That's why when we, put shadows on it, we'd use inks because they're very powerful, but it doesn't really kill that effect the same way. Oops. If you put in a bunch of white, especially, I found that it becomes very, I can't describe it. It just becomes so like kind of ugly and wrong looking. It's just simply just you simply just can't do it without something seriously looking wrong. It just doesn't work. So if you want to make it if you want to bring it that extra step up or step down significantly, I would go for a much darker or lighter metallic paint. Not so it has to have those metal flakes in it that are reflective. You can't have just non-metallic paint within there. It's just not going to work. Now when it comes to the leathers, I enjoy using flat brown just because it kind of gives you a very neutral brown color. So that way, if you want to tint it with red or blue or yellow, yes, I said blue, you can do that pretty easily. It's not too far anyway, so it allows you to not fight against that reddish brown, that kind of more pale yellow brown or something like that. If you have something that's very red or very blue or something, orange, green, whatever, then the brown is not going to be as friendly when you want to try and tint it. So you can just use the brown straight out of the bottle for the boots and the different straps, things like that. The handle of the blade, if that's available to paint. Sometimes the hand kind of just covers that up entirely, but that allows you to kind of just just put down a basic color that will show all those details off, but aren't really the main focus, because those straps and the boots are kind of off to the side to the main focus, which is the kind of that central line down the model. So really, it doesn't matter too much on what kind of brown you're using, but I mean, unless you feel very imaginative, I wouldn't really go for anything too bizarre. And of course, to highlight it, you can just mix in a bit of yellow. This is yellow ochre, which is not a very bright yellow. You want something that has a bit of substance to it, so it can kind of move the brown around, because yellow is not a very strong pigment. And this can just be used to highlight the straps if you want to spend that time on working on those details. And then of course, for furs and stuff such like that, I usually stick to the brown tones, but I do enjoy tinting those more. So what you can do is you would mix in a little bit of black in the lower section, and then have that brown tone further up, and just wet blend them together, and then mix in a bit of a yellow and brown, and then put that on the highest areas. And so you can see there's kind of a transition from dark to light, which a lot of different furs have. Of course, always look online for interesting patterns and whatnot, so you can get inspired by it. You can use very red colors. You can use just blacks and grays and whites if you like. There's a whole variety of different furs out there. So really just kind of do what you like. It's not incredibly important what the colors are, because unless it's really odd, like purple or something, then it's gonna look pretty good if you just have the technique down for that, for. But what the important thing is to use a significantly brighter color, and you can just kind of dry brush slash almost edge highlight, where you take like a finer detail brush, don't load too much on, and then kind of just let it catch that texture, and that will kind of give you help you pick out all those lines of texture that were modeled on the figure. And so that is how you can do stark fur. Next we have the flesh tone. So what we're doing here is we're mixing in some Bugman's Glow from Citadel with some Kislev Flesh from Citadel. I just find that even though I don't like the design of these pots, they can kind of get goomy and gunked up, and the price, there's some things to complain about, but I really like how dense and how powerful the pigment can be. That's really helpful when you're trying to paint a face. I haven't really used too many Vallejo Army Painter P3 skin colors yet, but I could experiment and maybe something else works even better. But I'm pretty happy with the Citadel so far, so I guess I am recommending them in the end. But basically, you can ignore the base and the layer stuff. I just will. You can either use Bugman's Glow as just the base color and then work up with Kislev Flesh, but I found it's actually nice to mix about 50-50 Bugman's Glow Kislev Flesh, so it's still pretty reddish, but it's not pure Bugman's Glow. And so you just put that on the skin areas, on the hand, on the face, just basically that will be your base coat. Then you would take Bugman's Glow out of the picture, and then you would just use Kislev Flesh and just build up those layers of highlight on the upper areas, and then you'd mix in increasing levels of white. This is just Vallejo's pure white, and this will just you just kind of bring it up until you're satisfied with how bright it is. But just remember, it's good to leave some areas of that base color and kind of just try and pick out those those brighter areas. I haven't completely figured out skin yet, but when I get a process down that I'm very happy with, it's not going to be technical or award winning, but just something that looks really good, that's quick and effective, just for your units and that sort of thing, then I'll probably do a dedicated video on that. But I also use a flesh wash. I actually find it's pretty helpful just to kind of define those darker areas. So what I'll do is allow it to settle in the eye sockets, kind of on the lower cheek, kind of below where the cheekbone is. And so basically you'd put that across the entire face, but just make sure that there's very little on the forehead or the nose, the cheekbones, and the chin. Kind of just the places you're going to highlight more. And this, and it, the reason I say that is because if you don't, if you have a single surface, let's say like this shoulder plate, and you only wash half of it because you say, oh well, this part, this highlight area, it's really bright. I don't want to wash it. You want to at least have like a tiny layer. It doesn't have to pool, but you need at least it to be wetted by the ink. And if you don't, then you're going to have those lines of where the ink dried, and that just really stands out, and it can be kind of annoying to get rid of. So just make sure if you're going to wash an area that you let the you have to spread the ink just across the entire surface essentially, and then just pick out where you want less of it by wiping your brush off and just kind of letting it be an eraser essentially. Now we're going to be talking about hair, and one effect you can bring out is kind of that salt and pepper kind of aged look. I feel like the Starks would have they kind of have this like culture and this aesthetic of being kind of worn and have seen a lot of winters, and they're hardened by that. And so you can do this simply by using black and white. And these are really, if you have to have 100 paints, at least have a black and a white, because you can achieve a lot with it, from the highlighting, the shadows, all that stuff, to just, it's just a very, very useful paint to have. But the reason I bring it up now is because you can just see how interesting it can be when you have just black and white. So essentially, I just worked with varying degrees of gray. I had a mid-tone gray, which I kind of just worked through the entire hair, and you can just tell by where the texture of the hair ends. Then I kind of just darkened it down in this bottom area here, and then just used a lighter gray and then a very light gray on the top area. And so that is how you can achieve kind of that gray texture. And it's important that you don't just paint it on, but you kind of just let it dabble and dapple it, let it blend together. You can do a bit of wet blending here. There's a lot of technical stuff I'm saying, but really, you just have to try it for yourself. You could look at salt and pepper mustaches and beards and hair to kind of get an idea, but the trouble is, in miniatures, you can't really pick out individual hairs, so you have to simply just express it, the idea, through a certain style. You can't just replicate things from life exactly because of how small these details are, but you can kind of give the sense of graying hair. So yeah, it for the other miniatures, again, we can go back to the flat brown. We can I wouldn't recommend doing a lot of blonde hair individuals for the Starks. I feel it doesn't really work for them as well. So you can just do black haired guys and just do kind of like dark or mid gray highlights. If you go too light, then it would look like they kind of have gray hairs like this. But if you kind of just keep it like dark and then that slightly lighter gray tone, then you can achieve that kind of young black hair without looking like it's too aged, if you're concerned that you you don't really want to bring that effect off. Then you can also have redheads, or kissed by fire, as they say in the books. And I think that's about it for the hairs. I think that's about it for the for the figures themselves. So that's basically the paint scheme. I just wanted to do this video kind of just to show what paints I use in total. If we bring them all out, you can count them with me. We have white and black, that's 2, brown is 3, yellow is 4, wolf gray is 5, Rakarth is 6, 2 inks 7 and 8, then Kislev, Bugman's 9, 10, and Pig Iron 11, I believe. Let's go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. So yeah, it seems like a lot of paints, but you can use just the set and make 100 painted models with it and not run out of paint, because these things come out thick. You thin them out, and then you can get some pretty good looking results with I won't say limited color scheme, but just a few different colors. So I think that about wraps it up. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll be posting the Lannister one shortly after, and I'll be doing a Bolton video pretty soon after that, so make sure to check those out, and I'll see you guys for the next one.